Hi, Dehenna. Nice to see you looking sparkly like a wrapped-up quality street this morning.
Absolutely. Well, what can I say? We're getting into that festive spirit, Rick. So, speaking of festive, what I want to talk about is the Rwanda vote last week. There was an awful lot written up about that, you know, all about kind of party disunity, about whether that vote would even pass, which, you know, would be a bit of a big deal if Rishi Sunak lost the second vote reading. Of course, it did pass in the end, but how are you feeling about the kind of mood of the party at the moment? Because it feels like this issue certainly is not settled.
Well, I've been, as you probably know, Dehenna, out and about across the country over the last few weeks, really speaking to people on the doorsteps and also to our MPs everywhere. And I think there's a real sense, actually, that this is a real dividing line between us and the Labour Party at the moment. They voted against everything that we've tried to do since we got into government to try and tackle illegal migration. And the Prime Minister's also made it very clear that if there is anything which is a credible legal argument, which wouldn't collapse the Rwanda deal, he's very happy to look at it as well when I'm talking to colleagues. So I think we're in the right place on this as a party. It's something that voters, I know in my constituency, and I'm sure across the rest of the country, also feel very, very, very strongly about. They want to see us tackle illegal migration, and they want to see us get those planes off to Rwanda as well. And I was just reading some of the Sunday papers this morning, where it appears that the Labour Party have a candidate not a million miles from northwest Durham, who seems to be doing flights and children's holidays to Rwanda at the same time as the Labour Party is saying it's not a safe place to send people, which does seem somewhat surprising to me.
Richard, you know, sorry, can I just say on that point, you know that that's completely disingenuous. There's a difference between saying that Rwanda is a great place for a holiday and saying that it's a great place to be sent to as a refugee forever. There is obviously a difference between those two things. Now, I have no idea what this MP was you know, this prospective MP is involved in, but there is surely a difference between saying somewhere you can visit for 2 weeks and it might not have the greatest human rights record if you are a dissident or if you are seeking sanctuary, and you might be put at risk of being sent elsewhere.
Well, what I say to that is that there's no question, I don't think, really, that Rwanda is actually a safe country. And I think this story just emphasises that fact. We've got to remember it's almost 30 years now since the major horrors we saw in Rwanda, which is the same distance from the mid-1970s to the end of the Second World War when it comes to West Germany. So I think we've got to really see it in that context now, whereas this is a country that's just clearly moved on, which in the public mind needs to be seen in that context that it is today rather than it was almost 30 years ago. And I really don't understand why Labour is still opposing our scheme when it was only last week all of the law enforcement agencies have been saying that in order to stop the boats, we do need that strong deterrent on top of the work we've already done. So we've already got those intelligence sharing agreements with Turkey, those new removal agreements with countries like Albania, and we've already got those in place, and we're already cracking down on migrant gangs here in the UK as well, with 70% more officers on the ground arresting hundreds of people. But we do need that deterrent effect, and at the moment I don't see what on earth the Labour Party is proposing to actually meet that need.
Well, on that, obviously the Rwanda policy has passed its first hurdle in Parliament, Rick, but you'll be as aware as I am that going through committee stage, looking at amendments from both the right of the party but also from the more One Nation, more sort of centrist end, we've still got some challenges at play. So how does the party get through that? Of course, ministers, the Prime Minister, are saying they're going to listen and potentially put in place workable amendments. But when you've got two opposing sides, how is that going to be balanced? And is this policy going to get through?
You're absolutely right, Dehenna. There are obviously challenges going forwards, but you know, my job, the job of the Prime Minister, is to take colleagues with us and make sure that we're united. Because I think all Conservatives, from whatever wing of the party they're from, want to see us tackling that illegal migration. We've already put so many laws in place, which has seen the crossings down by roughly a third this year. Over 20,000 people have been removed to their home country this year. And I think, you know, which is great, but we need to go further with this proper deterrent measure. And I think that all Conservatives on the same page on that. All of the Labour Party are united against that. My job is to make sure that if there are any more credible legal arguments which wouldn't collapse the deal, that they can be included in this legislation. But I think we're heading in a very sensible direction, and we need to ensure that these boats are stopped, because it's something which is of real importance when people think about us controlling our own borders and controlling who comes into the UK. Look, we're an open country, Dehenna. You know, whether it's in your patch or mine, we've seen Ukrainian refugees coming in. We've seen those people who served with our forces in Iraq and Afghanistan come in. And we've also seen actually people from Hong Kong come in, well over 100,000 of them. You know, we want to be able to be supportive, but we can only do that if we also have control of our own borders as well. And that's what this legislation is aimed at.
Thanks, Rick. So I'm curious, kind of moving just beyond migration, clearly we are seeing this as a great kind of electoral gain for us if we can get the migration policy right. But moving beyond that, do you genuinely see a path to a Conservative victory at the next general election? Because the polling is tough, isn't it?
Well, Dehenna, you know, when the Prime Minister appointed me, I don't think he did it thinking this would be an easy gig for me to do.
A poison chalice, if ever there was one.
Well, it's a tough gig, but I do think there's a clear way through, and I think the reason for that is I don't think people are really sold on Keir Starmer as Prime Minister and the Labour Party at all. You know, seats like mine, in North West Durham, people voted against Labour for the first time. And they did that for a variety of reasons. And we've got to remember that Keir Starmer was there all the way through supporting Jeremy Corbyn in both the 2017 general election and the 2019 general election, trying to make him Prime Minister. He then did a big appeal to Corbynite Labour Party members in 2019-2020 when he was trying to get the Labour leadership. I've just got no idea what Keir Starmer stands for. And you can only judge people by what they've done. And he did try and and what he said, and he really pivoted to that mass nationalisation, open borders policies when he was running for Labour leader, obviously in a similar place to Jeremy Corbyn for those years. And there were some Labour people who didn't stand by while anti-Semitism ripped through the Labour Party. You know, there's even some members of the shadow cabinet who didn't take part in Jeremy Corbyn's shadow cabinet then. Keir Starmer was there all the time, and I think there's some really big questions over him. I don't think the public are sold on him at all. I think they want to see on our side a united Conservative Party really addressing their issues, whether it comes to those tax cuts which are coming in January. They want to see us go further on that, or dealing with illegal migration. But I think there's all to play for, is what I'd say. And it's quite clear as well that there are some parts of the country, like in Scotland, where we can also definitely make potentially some gains in the general election as well, given what's happening with the SNP. So I think it's very much all to play for. And I just think that we need to ensure that Keir Starmer faces that scrutiny that the British people will want him to see over the next few months.
Well, let us know if you agree with Richard Holden, Chairman of the Conservative Party. If you disagree with him, let us know. Get in touch, drop us a text, give us a call, or tweet us. Rick, I want to ask you about one more thing, something I spotted in The Telegraph today, which is a letter that I think has been sent to you as chairman about candidate selections. Now, this is a bit of a geeky, niche political topic, but I think some people at home will be interested that allegedly you're ready to take over from central office and tell associations what candidates they shouldn't be choosing. Tell us about that, because that doesn't sound like the Conservative Party I know.
Well, as you'll know, Dehenna, when you were selected as a candidate, there was a big open selection about a year out from the general election. I was actually selected under those emergency by-election rules right at the last minute when a previous candidate had stepped aside. And I just want to make sure that all associations right across the country have that choice to select a candidate rather than that rush job right at the last minute when we've got to really get people in there quickly. So we're not doing anything immediately. I want to have a proper conversation with the party, and one will always have these little bits of comments and questions in the run-up to a general election. But all I want to do is ensure that all of our associations, like the one I was a member of since I was a young teenager, because I am that sort of political child geek.
You and me both, Rick. You and me both.
Went into politics. I want to make sure that our members really have a say as much as is possible, and not people right at the last minute going through on by-election rules.
Well, hopefully that's been reassuring to some of those Conservative members at home watching. Richard Holden, Chairman of the Conservative Party, thank you for your time this morning. Jonathon, obviously, I want to come to you to get your reaction. What do you make of what Rick said?
Well, I mean, it was complete nonsense from start to finish. And, you know, that, well, it's all to play for. I mean, we could rejoin the European Union next year as well, but that's not going to happen.
That was on my bingo card, you saying that, so that's my first one.
Anything is possible, but it's not going to happen. The Conservatives are going to lose. It's going to be absolutely justifiable. The public has had enough of them. And seeing Richard Holden up there, you know, you can understand why. I mean, you just can't believe a single thing that they say about anything. All that stuff he was saying about Rwanda, complete nonsense. The Supreme Court has given its verdict on Rwanda. It is not a safe place. And the government's saying dogs are cats. It's saying what the Supreme Court is basically seeking to override the power of the Supreme Court. We have a separation of powers in this country for a reason. It means that ministers don't get to have total power. That there's the executive, there's Parliament, and there's the judiciary. And they are seeking to overturn the power of the judiciary, on a par with what Benjamin Netanyahu was trying to do in Israel, which led to all those protests before the war. And so the government, it can pass whatever law it likes. It cannot overturn its international obligations, and it cannot just sort of ignore what the Supreme Court has said. And so it's going to run into all kinds of legal problems. And the fundamental dishonesty, and this is what makes me so angry, Dehenna, is that the government could stop this crisis of small boats overnight because it doesn't allow any safe and legal routes to come here. The reason that these people smugglers are getting so fabulously rich and these people are taking these unseaworthy vessels to come here is that the government is not allowing them to come here any other way in order to claim asylum. And we know that when they do come here to claim asylum, a vast majority of them are actually approved for asylum, 75% roughly. So if the government allowed them to take registered vessels to come here and then claim asylum, or allow them to claim asylum in France and then come here on legal registered vessels afterwards, you'd solve this problem overnight. They're not going to do that because they don't want to upset right-wing newspaper editors. That's the only reason. It's completely cynical, completely disgusting. And another thing, well,
you won't be surprised I'll disagree on a few points, but this is not just about me and you, this is about our viewers too, John. So I'm going to interrupt you because I want to bring in Vernon from Staffordshire. Good morning, Vernon. Are you with us? Oh, no. Hello. Hopefully we have Vernon from Staffordshire joining us this morning. Hello, Vernon. No, well, we will come back. We will get Vernon on air because we are very keen to hear from you. So this is us talking about the Prime Minister's comments on migration and, of course, talking about the Rwanda bill, which has recently passed its second stage in the House of Commons. But we want to hear from you. Is the Prime Minister saying what you want to hear from him on migration? He's talking tough,